let's get our morning intelligence briefing. And to provide that briefing, it's my former colleague on Capitol Hill, the former chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, Pete Hoekstra of Michigan, Skyping in from Washington, D.C. at our Newsmax Washington Bureau. Pete, there's an al-Qaida video that's in the news as well this morning, and we'll get to that. But first, with Senator Paul's introduction of that legislation, in essence, a declaration of war, do you agree with Senator Paul's reasoning in this case?
I do. I think there's two issues here, JD. I think the first is, should Congress be asserting itself into these kinds of foreign policy issues? And to that, I think I give a resounding yes. I applaud the work that Senator Paul and some others on Capitol Hill are trying to do to get Congress back in this process to frame for the president, but also to frame for America what our responsibilities are, who we're at war with, and what authorities we are going to give to the executive branch to conduct military operations. So I think that that's the right thing to do. Now, the specifics on Senator Paul's, I may have some disagreements with him on what the specifics are, narrowing it down to just ISIS, and putting a one-year moratorium or a one-year sunset on it. Those are, technical things that I might want to change. But I think having the discussion, framing this between Congress and the president to define our activities in war, I think that's a healthy thing to do.
And part of the language where you may take friendly exception comes in the Paul legislation in this declaration of war. The senator saying the primary function of the federal government is to defend the country, but defense is different from offense. It's really a difficult balance to strike based on the gains ISIS has made and the direct threats they have made against our homeland. Would this declaration inhibit the use of force?
Well, if the resolution says we are declaring war on ISIS, I believe, and again, I haven't read all of what is in Senator Paul's resolution, but I would think that that would give the president the authority to conduct the military operations necessary to defeat ISIS, which means military operations in Iraq and Syria, which may be limited to training and equipping the forces on the ground, non-American forces, because I think that's all that we would need to defeat ISIS. So I think it would give the president the latitude and sufficient authority to conduct the mission.
Well, even without the input of Congress, this president continues to send, quote, advisors, and in essence, troops into Iraq to deal with ISIS. The latest report, some 250 paratroopers from our airborne ranks going in. And when you think about the support troops, as I understand it now, the estimate of American troops in Iraq is close to 4,000. So with that American presence, is there any evidence that it's having a positive effect in this battle against ISIS?
No, I think at this point in time, it's kind of a stalemate. ISIS is making some progress in certain areas. I do some work with the Kurds. The Kurds are making progress in parts of northern Iraq. But to really change conditions on the ground, it's not going to be American boots on the ground. It's going to be a training and equipping the folks that are willing to shed blood and to take casualties to defeat ISIS. Who is that? Number one, it is the Kurds. Number two, it is the Iraqi military. And number three, it is the Sunni tribes. And we have not put in place a foreign policy that is working quickly and effectively to get these groups that are willing to fight, to get them to the point where they can engage offensively ISIS and roll ISIS back.
Now, Pete, a report a couple of days ago that the Iranians are using the old jet fighters we sold to them back in the 70s. Iranian jet fighters are over Iraqi airspace targeting ISIS. Anything that would suggest some sort of coordination, obviously informally, between the United States and Iran on these air missions by the Iranian Air Force?
If there's any kind of coordination between the U.S., Iraq, and Iran, whether Iraq is serving as an intermediary. It's absolutely outrageous. We do not need Iranian help to conduct air operations with 70s era jets against ISIS. We own the skies above Iraq and Syria, us and our allies. We have another mission with Iran, that is to continue strict sanctions on Iran and to do everything possible to stop their development of nuclear weapons. We don't need them as an ally to confront and defeat ISIS.
A minute and a half.
We're coordinating with them. Shame on us.
About a minute 15 remaining in this segment, Pete. There's a new video out from al-Qaida in North Africa, in Yemen. An American photojournalist kidnapped. He appears on the tape denouncing America, basically warning America that we will pay. What info do you have on this video? What kind of importance do you give it?
Well, I think the importance that I give it is that it shows that al-Qaida now is becoming more brutal and it is becoming more ISIS-like than what it had in the past. There is a competition between al-Qaida and ISIS for leadership in the radical jihadist movement. Rather than moderating, it recognizes that to be the leader, it needs to become more radical. I'm very concerned about what may happen to this American and other Western hostages that are held by al-Qaida.
15 seconds. We tried to mount a rescue to get this guy. We didn't. Was there a leak in our intelligence?
I don't know the granularity on that, JD. They're getting better at keeping these hostages, moving them around. I think we're doing everything we can. And I think we've probably got pretty secure operations as long as we don't involve the locals.
Fair enough. We'll leave it there. Invite you back in mere moments. More with Pete Hoekstra right after this. Let's continue our conversation with former House Intelligence Committee Chairman Pete Hoekstra. Pete, so often we are dealing with foreign affairs and maneuvers overseas, but Washington has some unique going on that we just have to pull the curtain back on. This whole fight over spending, what's being nicknamed the Cromnibus Plan. Will Speaker Boehner succeed in passing a symbolic resolution of disapproval and then funding the government on through till September?
Well, I think what will happen by next week, Thursday, which is when funding for the federal government expires, and if they don't pass some type of a resolution, government would shut down. What will happen? Yes, Congressman Yoho's resolution will pass Congress. It will probably pass overwhelmingly with some bipartisan support because it condemns the president's action on immigration, his overreach. So those who are concerned, number one, about the content of his resolution, of his actions, but also just about the overreach, will vote for the congressman's resolution. The second thing is by next week, Thursday, the Speaker and Republicans will have put together some type of a package that will keep government running. Whether it's exactly what the Speaker outlined earlier this week or not, I'm not sure, but I think that there are enough within the Republican caucus who believe that getting to Thursday and waking up on Friday morning and having the government shut down is a bad idea. So exactly what steps and how they'll get there. JD, you and I have been there. You and I have been part of them making sausage. We know how messy it is. It will get done, but right now you just don't know what it will be on Thursday.
Well, earlier in this program, Congressman Matt Salmon, who was there with us and is now back in Washington, was with us. He led a meeting this morning of concerned congressmen and some gentlemen from the U.S. Senate looking to change the plan, looking to shorten the window on spending. But Matt is of the mind, and I think this disturbs a lot of people. Pete King was here yesterday. If you fund a CR, even for just a few months, you are basically letting the president go ahead with his unconstitutional action. Jeff Sessions makes the point that you can put into the legislation specific language to forbid the president from spending money, even that money that may come in via fees rather than congressional appropriations. So given that blowback, do you expect to see a change in the Boehner plan before a vote next week?
I think it's very possible that there will be a change in the Boehner plan, either broadening the number of spending bills that only go for a couple of months, or adding some provisions that block exactly what you said. You know, the excuse early on was, well, you know, we can't stop the administration from spending certain monies because they come in through the fee process. Again, you and I were there. We know that the appropriators can put legislative language into an appropriation bill, although they don't like to do it. It can be done, and it may be done. The important thing is they'll work through this process. They'll get to 218 votes. They will pass something on Thursday. They will keep the government open. But I think the good sign here is we're seeing Congress asserting itself, and they're going to have to do a lot of that over the next 2 years, because this president is going to govern by executive order, and Congress is going to have to assert itself, and the only or the most effective way to do that is to do it through the spending process, because all spending by the federal government starts in the U.S. House of Representatives. So this is where Speaker Boehner and House Republicans are going to take the lead, and now they have allies in the U.S. Senate to implement whatever spending strategies that they can come up with. Then when they get to 2015, if the president starts vetoing those spending bills because of the limitations that Republicans put in, it will be the president who shuts the government down, not the Congress.
Pete Hoekstra, we appreciate your analysis of events in Washington, D.C. and abroad, and we'll see what happens. Somehow, I think we have always seen the Washington press corps try to blame Republicans no matter what, but it may ever be thus. Pete Hoekstra, thanks again, and America's Forum will continue following this time out.